me and my friend Alan were, talking like, what could we think of doing? And he goes, I'm surprised nobody's ever done, MTV of the movies. And I went, wait a second. MTV stands a host when MTV showed music.
Yeah.
They stand a host in front of a green screen and go, and Madonna has a new video. I said, we could stand a host in front of a green screen and go, and Schwarzenegger has a new movie. We thought we were brilliant. We wrote a business plan.
And this is
Uh,
movie time, or what would become movie time.
it was movie time. Originally, we were just going to be about movies.
Okay.
And we were based on trailers because people loved them and they were cheap. It was a cheap way of getting, on the air. And we, 3.5 years after people going, it's a nice idea, but, people don't start TV networks. You got to be a big media. You got to be Fox. You got to be Disney. You got to be Paramount. And we weren't smart enough to listen, so we just kept going.
We weren't
So
smart enough to
eventually we
listen.
found someone on Wall Street who, when we went to the guy's office, he had movie posters on the wall. And he's going, oh, I love this. I used to be the entertainment reporter for my college newspaper. And we're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. By this time, we were rejected over 100 times. And he said, I really love this. I want to do it. And I'm going, well, the range for starting a TV network now is somewhere between 60 and 100 million. I said, could you give us the 100 so we could do everything we have in our head? And he goes, well, I would love to do that, but I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with 2.5? I can't even buy the cameras for 2.5.
Yeah.
And, finally we just looked at each other and we said, you know what? We'll figure this out. We took the $2.5 million. I had a friend who was teaching radio, television, film at University of Texas in Austin. And I called him up and said, Brian, do you have kids that need intern jobs for the summer? And he goes, yeah, we had trouble placing. I go, send me all you got. So we literally rented apartments, bought mattresses, and Brian sent 31 interns from UT, Texas. So what people don't realize, because he's now, it is the influencer of pop culture on a global scale. It's 142 countries and the valuation's up above 7 billion and, all of that. But he started not from a big media company. It was 11 employees and 31 interns.
Yeah. Scrappy. It's funny because so many people have stories like that. And it's interesting, when you surround yourself or when you're lucky enough to have a circle of people that have found success. They always start off with this scrappy sort of, it's 11 people in a room and we're living on mattresses, eating ramen noodles. And then, yeah, now we've got, an $85 billion valuation. For people that want to be at the top of the mountain and see the vistas that you see, that's not rare. That's not unique. Everybody wants that vantage point. But it's the separation between those that are willing to ruck up the mountain to get what you got, right? To get rejected by 100, to have your pitch rejected 100 times. Most people, and I think you would argue this point, they get 2 pitches rejected and they're like, all right, I'm going back to work.
Yeah.
You sort of, it's funny, history has a tendency to whitewash the true reality. You brushed over this like it was just nothing. Yeah, we pitched it 100 times and everybody said no. But at the time when you lived in that sort of reality, wasn't there not like some existential crisis where you're like, all right, guys, this is, you do it twice and you're like, all right, fuck it. We're not doing this anymore. We need a new plan. Or would you stay the course?
I literally almost every day. It was, so many times. We had one meeting with, venture capital company where, the guy had to sit in the conference room for an hour waiting for him, and he finally walked in, sat down. This is a day where you actually had printed business plans.
Yeah.
And our business plan was like 200 pages in a thick book.
Yeah.
And, the guy comes in, sits down after an hour, doesn't apologize for being an hour late, and goes, who sent me this piece of garbage? And takes the business plan and throws it at my head.
Was that performative? Did he actually
Yeah.
read it or was it just performative?
I think he did read it, because he threw it at my head. And, being a Coney Island kid, nobody throws anything at my head without, getting a little bit of pushback. So him and I scream at each other for 15 minutes. And then he just looks at me. He goes, I like it. I'm in. And he walks out of the room. and just turns to the investment banker and goes, call me and let's make the deal. And I'm sitting there going, what the heck
What
just
just
happened here?
what just happened? Yeah, it's funny though, right? He said he was in. I have been in so many meetings, right? I own a large, privately held large company. Um, and I've been into so many meetings with so many investors in my youth, all the way through my, mid 40s, where you'll talk to somebody and they'll say, I'm in, and then you don't hear from them. Why is it that so many people, and again, is this the performative nature of people? They always want to say they're in. They always want to act like they're willing to put in money,
Yeah.
but the check never comes. And that's had to
That,
happen to you.
that's true, and it much more so in China. I do a lot of stuff out of the country these days.
Yeah.
And,
I was
that's kind
reading
of
that.
the way it is in China. It took me, we've navigated China very successfully. And but the first 3 years were me learning that, when Chinese people shake their head and go, yeah, yeah, this means I don't have a clue what you're talking about. Um, and it took a while to learn that. So, we've learned, you know, write it down, make them sign it,
Yeah.
and do all of that stuff. So you just deal with it differently. But
Because I always felt that like deals would die in due diligence, right? But in truth, so many people that are looking for, it could be VC money, it could just, it could be private equity money, or it could be a few steps before that even. Everybody wants to act like they're in. They want to be the big macher in the room. Like, yeah, I'm in. And then when it comes time to put in the money, right? That's when that's when people sort of fold their hand. It's I think for a lot of entrepreneurs it's challenging, right? Because the base that I have, the viewers that I have that watch my podcast, they're aspiring entrepreneurs. These are guys that have businesses. The target is 5 to 10 million. That's where they're at, and they want to remove themselves largely from the business because they're the bottleneck, so that they can grow. And so they understand, right? It's going to take external capital, and they're going to have to remove themselves largely from the day-to-day operations and the mundane and the myopic sort of, I need to make every single decision. At what point in the sort of ascent in the arc of your career did you start to realize that you were becoming a better capital markets guy, right? Meaning that you could go out and get money, and that was a better use of your time maybe than running the operation day to day, or did that never happen?